Hello, everybody. I'm in an office on campus and want to give you the first of the lectures concerning the structure of the course in greater detail so that you will have that framework in which to place material that we will study into your memories in a way that may be helpful. Also, I want to introduce the course in a broad way. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is open up some device to show your PowerPoint, the first PowerPoint, Introduction to Counseling Psychology, to Counseling, and to follow along because I'm following the PowerPoint. The first slide really is that I want you to think for yourself. I want you to consider what you're hearing. Now, the reason that we want to think for yourself is obvious, but let me spread this out a little bit. So, each of us has misconceptions about people. We have misconceptions about ourselves, about others. We have a tendency to believe things that we were told when we were very young, and to some extent may carry those with us, even into adulthood. The media is not a good source, generally, for information about what is true and known about human beings. And in addition, we have limited understanding of the complexities of humans. So I'm always going to distinguish between that which is known or a close approximation to truth about humans and about this field of counseling. And if I don't say anything about something I'm discussing, it then represents what the field describes. But if I'm describing clinical experience, then I will label it as such. And if I am offering an opinion, I may offer an opinion, and by telling you it's an opinion, that will be rare. Now, we should do those things so that you can measure the validity and maybe the reliability of statements made by someone who is your guide in any field. Okay? And we need to minimize the opinion that we give, that is simply opinion, maybe rely on clinical experience in the case of clinical providers like myself, and be careful about what we say that we do know versus what we believe is true in the field. Okay, so think for yourself. All right. Now, we're going to study, as you have already heard me say early on in the first set of videos, styles of counseling, but we'll also talk about career issues. We'll talk about specific therapeutic listening skills and assorted other topics. So we're going to cover this in a broad way, but know ahead of time that we're not going to be able to cover all the forms of counseling that exist. We'll cover the ones that have historical importance and those that are used frequently. Okay, so if your favorite kind is not represented here, it's more that we don't have time for it. Okay, specifically, I have training in behavioral and cognitive behavioral therapy and counseling. I have training in client-centered, existential, gestalt, and eclecticism, which is putting different things together. Okay, but I would never claim to be an expert in any particular area beyond my training and experience. Okay, all right. So that's roughly what we're going to talk about. Now, always relate what you read and what you hear if you're in class or watch the videos to your own experience. Reflect on your own needs and motivations and values and life experiences, and apply things to your own personal growth. Compare and contrast what you thought was true versus what we believe is true in the field. And attempt by the end of the semester to identify the style of counseling that fits you best and why. We're going to do an exercise about that as we move forward, okay? So one of the great things about counseling is that it really involves watching people move beyond their own self-limitation. And often, despite whatever is happening around them, whatever limitations they may have on the external end of things, we see a tendency to limit ourselves internally about what we might be able to choose or do differently. So you get to watch people make that transition. And that's really cool. It's part of the grandeur of counseling. We become then a piece of the machinery, if you will, in the healing process. Now, we are really a chain link. We are not the whole chain. We are just a link. We may be one other therapist they've seen. We may be the only one. They may go on to others. I don't know. Their healing is their own, you see. We represent a point in their lives that hopefully is a very positive place and represents that link, a link. It's not the whole chain, okay? You're not a savior. You're not a friend. You're in some ways a guide. You're in some ways a holding environment for them. And so you need to remember that. If you expect to be the miracle worker, that's not going to happen. And you shouldn't have that as a goal in any way, shape, or form. Okay? All right. Although the counseling relationship is one-sided, in other words, you're not an equal participant in self-disclosure, you're not in therapy with them, and it isn't about you in the room, although you are a part of that dynamic. I need to explain that this is a very, although one-sided, very, very intimate or intense, we'll use the word intense, kind of dynamic, where a person can bring in anything they want to talk about. They can say whatever they want. And for some people, this is absolutely new and different and freeing and also scary. But it's very intense at times. For others, they may have had other therapists or counselors, and they may have talked about things many times. But the reason they're still talking about what it is they're talking about is they haven't finished it yet. They haven't figured out how to move to the next point in their lives. They haven't decided what to decide, you see. So it's intense no matter what. It's an intimate relationship. And you will get a chance to have a greater focus immediately with alarm bells if there are issues you still have that are unhealed in any large way. Now, you don't have to be completely psychologically and wonderfully healthy and all your cylinders working all the time. No. But if you have raw spots, if you had sore spots, some clients are going to light them up. So you're going to maybe find that out. So you want to be sure that you have options for your own healing. If you need to see a counselor, then you would do that. If you have a need for ongoing counseling, then you would do that. If you have need to just check in with supervisor, you would do that. Okay. All right. Okay. So where is my little thing here? There we go. So what is counseling? I have a number of definitions for you. One is, and this is Kavanaugh's, the author of the Little Red Book. By the way, that, once again, is a great book. Yes, it's required. It's a great book. You're going to love it. It's easy to read. It's a quick read, too. He says, counseling is a relationship between a helper and a person seeking help in which both the skills of the helper and the atmosphere co-created really, helps the person to learn how to relate with themselves and others in more growth-producing ways. So this is a definition that emphasizes relationships as being the primary healer and mover through our lives. And you can make a strong case for that. I would say that's true. Just my opinion. Here's another definition. Counseling and psychotherapy rely on the strategic use of intimacy. So we know that it's an intimate venture to be in counseling, where people talk about things they may not talk with any others about, and they explore things and decide, what it is that they eventually need to do about such things, and learn whatever skills that they need to learn to do those things they have decided to do. So we are using that intensity and that level of intimacy to help them. So it is strategic in some ways, isn't it? Here's another definition, or two. Here's another one. It says, a supportive and empathic professional relationship that provides a framework for the exploration of emotions, behaviors, and thinking patterns, and the facilitation of healthy changes. Here's a definition that emphasizes the initial exploration, but then finishes with facilitating healthy, making changes. And this one, without saying it, tells us something important, and that is that we don't want to spend all our time exploring, because that would never end. That would never end. You would explore forever and never make changes. See? All right, one more definition. Counseling is directed toward people experiencing difficulties as they live through the normal stages of lifespan development and adjust to them. This is a healthy version. It is not focused on psychopathology. It's focused on the normalcy of difficulties that we all face. And the counseling, in particular, is one that addresses some of the normative experiences that we have and our adjustment to those. Okay? All right. Now, I want to emphasize with you that the most important thing that you need to keep in your mind as a question about people, whether you're doing counseling with them or you're just trying to understand them, interacting with them, it's not what's wrong with them. It's not what's wrong with them, you see. It's what's happened to them. Okay? So we need to not think about someone as an entity of pathology and illness and sickness. No. We need to think of them as people who have a history that we don't know about, that they have not yet grappled with, that they maybe have not accepted, that they maybe have not moved away from and towards more healthy behaviors and circumstances. Okay? I want to be real clear about that. Now, there are technical differences between psychotherapy and counseling. Counseling technically may deal with less severe pathologies. It involves less intensive work within the structure of a personality, and it tends to be short-term and more supportive. The goals are somewhat limited and more concrete. Technically speaking, psychotherapy is in the opposite direction. It's a little longer term, if not long term. It's reconstructive in some ways of personality issues and dynamics. It deals with more severe sorts of situations. But that's technically. In point of fact, psychotherapists do what counselors do, and counselors do what psychotherapists do, and the clients you see are overlap so dramatically that there really isn't a practical difference between them. Some people like to say, I'm a psychotherapist, and some people say I'm a counselor, a mental health counselor. Those are technical differences. Coming up, part 2.